Good afternoon. Hello, everybody. My father, Michael Antonakes, is a professor emeritus of comparative literature at Salem State University in Salem, Massachusetts, where he received, on his retirement, an honorary doctorate of humane letters for his work in part on Nikos Kazantzakis. In 1963-1964, he was a Fulbright scholar at the University of Athens, preparing his doctoral study for New York University on the topic of Christ, freedom, and Kazantzakis, for which he received a Founders Day Award for academic excellence. His translation, with Thanasis Maskaleras of Kazantzakis' Russia, a chronicle of 3 journeys in the aftermath of the revolution, received a translation award from Columbia University. He has published essays on Kazantzakis and has lectured extensively on him in the United States. When not teaching, he has spent many hours working in the theater. A member of Actors' Equity, he has appeared in over 40 productions as actor-playwright. 2 of his plays, He Who Must Die, an adaptation of Kazantzakis' Christ Crucified, and The Man from Crete, a collage of scenes from the life and works of Kazantzakis, have been produced at Yale University, at Salem State University, and in theaters of Boston, New York, and San Francisco. On January 4th, 5th, and 6th, He Who Must Die will be staged in a 6-performance run at the beautiful Richmond Hill Performing Arts Center. This landmark Greek cultural event is generously supported and sponsored by AHEPA Toronto. And we encourage all AHEPAns, daughters of Penelope, sons of Pericles, and maids of Athena, and fans of Nikos Kazantzakis to attend our opening night. This afternoon, my father will focus on some of the key moments in Kazantzakis' life and the impact they had on his creative spirit. My father is recovering from open-heart surgery, and he will not lead a discussion after the talk. But he'll be happy to take comments and questions during the coffee break. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my distinct honor to introduce my father, Professor Michael Antonakes.
Thank you, Dean. A tribute to the life of Nikos Kazantzakis. If you can't hear me, raise your hand. Back in 1983, during a symposium at Hellenic College in Massachusetts, honoring the centennial of the birth of Nikos Kazantzakis, his wife Elaine told her audience that her husband was very clear about the purpose of his life and his work. It was to search for God. It is an irony, of course, that Kazantzakis suffered personal and professional pain for taking this road. In this talk, I would like to mention 5 or 6 influences or moments that played a role in his political and in his essentially religious vision. They are the classical Greek view of the world, the role of 2 philosophers, Friedrich Nietzsche and Henri Bergson, his experience in the Soviet Union, his love for Christ and Buddha, his dynamic relationship with Yorgos Zorbas, his fictional name Alexis Zorba. Nikos Kazantzakis was born in 1983 in Heraklion, Crete, and died in 1957 in a hospital in Freiburg, Germany. As a boy, he lived through the terror of the Turkish occupation. At one point, the Turks were taking hostages. Someone has killed a Turk, the father said. The father was sharpening his knife in their living room. If the Turks break down the door, I plan to slaughter you myself before you fall into their hands. For his safety, he was sent to a Catholic school on the island of Naxos. As a student, he excelled in religious studies, literature, and languages, French and Italian. A number of his works he first wrote in French, and a priest told him he should consider a career in the church that he could eventually become a cardinal. His father said no, and he went back to school in Crete and then to the University of Athens. For 4 more years he studied in France and Germany. In 1908, he wrote to his mother and sisters from Paris, "Dear Mother Anastasia and Eleni, I have no greater joy than to get a letter from you. Really, many times I say to myself that no one in the world loves his mother and his sisters as much as I do. The other day I went to the university. A friend of mine said to me the moment he saw me, 'What's wrong with you? What's come over you?' 'I got a letter from home,' I shouted to him. 'That's what's come over me.'" Later in his autobiography, he will say, "Women I loved. I was lucky to meet extraordinary women along my route. Men never did so much good for me as these women." In two novels, he has 2 of his characters, Katerina in Christ the Crucified, and Mary Magdalene in The Last Temptation, sacrificed themselves to protect the Jesus figure with a kind of devotion he may have felt he received from his mother and sisters. On his way home from Paris, he traveled to Florence and Rome. His father, whom he loved, hated, feared, and admired, complained about his trip. On March of 1909, young Nikos wrote, "I assure you, dearest father, I'm not roaming about the foreign cities, suffering so many things just for my caprice like a tourist. While all the young people, all my friends enjoy life, I've been staying at home with my books, in my room, or at the universities, trying to earn back whatever you have spent on me, because one day I want to make our name illustrious." From 1906 to 1913, he prepared his thesis on Nietzsche, wrote his first plays, started to translate a group of philosophers into Greek, and married Galatea Alexiou in 9/11. At the same time, he expressed his love for Leo Tolstoy. He made a visit to a monastery in Mount Athos in Greece, and his quest for spiritual vision began. Like Tolstoy, he wanted to, quote, "create religion." In 1921, he went off again to France, Germany, and Austria. He wrote about the conditions there in Vienna, to his wife Galatea. At night, thousands of women circulate in the street and offer themselves for a bite to eat. Starving sex. There's no sorrow more terrible. 800,000 people took part in a demonstration the other day. We will soon have a revolution here, and France is to blame for the entire catastrophe. Kazantzakis faulted France because of its excessive demands for reparations after World War I. The revolution would bring the rise of Adolf Hitler. Again to Galatia, 1922. "You don't know how deeply I'm affected when I see the hunger and despair that people are suffering. Boys begging for food, young girls selling themselves. My God, what misery. How long will it last? Yesterday there was a woman sitting on the pavement with one leg raised up over the other, and her whole body was showing, stark naked up to her navel. She looked sad and cynical and terribly pale from hunger. Modesty is indeed a luxury for the wealthy." During the period between 1924 and 26, his marriage ended with Galatea, and he began a serious relationship with Eleni Somyos, who would eventually become his second wife. Returning to Heraklion, he decided to take political action at home. Like many intellectuals, he saw Lenin in Russia as the new savior. While in Berlin, he had been close to his Jewish friends on the left, who saw the coming of fascism. He decided to meet with leaders of the Communist Party in Heraklion, Tuolini, in 1924. My cruel duty is to reject my mother and father, to separate from them, and take my stand contrary to their morality, religion, social prejudices, and their economic endeavors. Yesterday evening I talked to my father a little about Bolshevism. He got all heated and excited and silent. Then he got up and went off to his own room. There is no greater expression of his rage. In 1925, he decided to go to Russia to see this new Christ, Lenin. His first disillusionment began when he saw the Russians trying to control a world that would not obey them. Tuolini. What moves me in Russia is not the reality they have achieved, but the reality which they long for and do not know they cannot attain. In November 1926, he was thinking of running for public office. Tuolini. In 3 years' time, I'm thinking of going down to Crete and presenting myself as a communist candidate for deputy in parliament. This will give me the opportunity to talk in simple words to the poor people and the hungry. That's the modern way to proclaim our religion. In 1927, he went back to Russia, to his friend, Michael Anastasiou. I am celebrating in Moscow the 10th anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution. But now, experiencing Russia face to face is turning that dream into a grim reality. The revolutionaries have become reactionaries. They do not see the larger circle. One can say that Kazantzakis' argument with communism was his ever-present view that its basic rigidity left no room for a creative view of the world. It kept attempting to control reality in the grip of an impermanence that refused to be governed and was always recreating itself. The influence of Bergson. In a debate with a Bolshevik leader in which he argued that the human personality, Christ, Buddha, Mohammed, others, was a more powerful force than economic factors in social history, the discussion ended when the Bolsheviks said, if you remain in Russia and you decide to propagate these ideas, I will give the order to hang you. An experience in a children's theater during the Stalin years may have triggered Kazantzakis' prophetic conclusion 50 years before the end of the Cold War that the Russian experiment would not succeed. Here is a section from Kazantzakis' Russia, translated by Thanasis Maskaleris and myself. The theater was crowded with boys and girls. There were red ties and rosettes of Lenin everywhere. An energetic, high-spirited Komsomol had climbed on the stage and, standing in front of the still-closed curtain, spoke with good humor and explained the program to the children. Quiet, quiet, now you will see. Red paper masks were then passed out to all the children. The stage curtain opened. All of a sudden, a fast-moving, violent, and naive drama burst forth on the stage. In America, the first inhabitants, the Indians with their many-colored feathers and their chocolate-like bodies, proclaim a revolution. They can no longer tolerate the bestial American capitalist who exploits them and kills them. Several children with red neckties then appear and speak, encouraging the revolutionaries. They raise the red flag. An airman enters. He turns on the small device, and the voice of the earth is heard. The women are crying, the workers are shouting. The myriad voice sound of the despairing, victimized masses increases in volume until suddenly a triumphant cry explodes, a name like a thunderbolt. Lenin! At this moment, the fascist Russian, dressed in black with bones and skulls painted on their chests, they set up their cannons and prepare for the assault. The revolutionaries are in danger, and then in one wave-like motion, the entire audience of children, body and soul, rises to its feet. Angry children with their red masks climb on the stage, merge with the pioneers and the Indians, and together they strive to tear the fascists to pieces. The unfortunate actors playing the fascists roll down into the orchestra, jump over the seats, and rush toward the door to escape. The children, standing upright but panting and uproarious from the agitation of battle, now inflate their small chests and sing the communist hymn as though possessed. The theater emptied. As the children went into the corridors, they talked in shouts. They did not want to leave, unwilling to separate from one another. The director of the theater, a slender, energetic woman with short, fiery blonde hair, lit her cigarette and, breathing the smoke out of her wide nostrils, asked me, "So how did our children's theater seem to you?" Posso spanje che li pon, to pedikomas teatro? Shaken and unnerved, I answered, "These are not children. They are tiny, merciless men and women. You've sucked out the dew of their childish souls. You don't allow them to play a moment unless the game has an immediate and propagandistic purpose. They don't play, they are in training." The director laughed sarcastically. "I know, you want myths, fantastic birds, fairies, dragons, kings, and blonde princesses. You want to fill the heads of children with a non-existent fantasy world, and to make them wander in the depths of the sea or up in the clouds but never on the ground. In that way you blur their eyes so they never see the truth." I got angry. "What appears fantastic to us," I answered, "is for the child the deepest and most palpable reality. He rides astride a bamboo reed. We adults see it as a reed. But for the child it is a horse, the most authentic horse that exists. Myths and tales are the deepest and most inexhaustible source of creative power for a child. He has his own world, one that is altogether different from ours. We must awaken that world if we want children that are whole, that is, children who later become mature men and women." Kazantzakis was also dismayed by the constant attacks on religion in Russia. The irony here is certain church leaders would attack him on his return to Greece. In 1928, we spoke at the Alhambra Theater in Athens about his experiences in Russia. He was jailed and awaited trial. He wrote to Elena, "I remain here like a prisoner of war. The trial is going to take place, and it will be a fierce one, because the judges want to strike Nikos and me mercilessly in order to put fear into the others. The prosecuting attorney has bought everything I've published in order to prove I want to destroy religion, morality, fatherland, etc. It's a disgrace to live under the same sky with such creatures." Nikos was the publisher of his religious tract, The Saviors of God, and the charges were eventually dropped. Reacting to attacks from critics and intellectuals he would endure for the most of his career, he wrote this letter to Eleni from Chita, Manchuria. Waiting at the railway station. Last night, I had an unexpected joy. Here in Chita, there are 150 Greeks. When they found out that I had come, they congregated in a house and took me to it. And for long hours, I had a most interesting and warmly affectionate conversation with them. Simple people, bakers, cobblers, farmers, they put endless questions to me in that lonely place. And as they told me, they got together every evening, but never succeeding in finding any answers. What is communism? Why has Greece been conquered? Why was man born? What does honor mean? Will there be a war? Where are we going? If I were Christ, surely my apostles would be people like these. Love, warmth, trust. The intellectuals are barren, dishonest, doomed. I felt tired and sad. But with these simple people, I regained my confidence in humankind. Chita, a little city in Manchuria, a thing that until yesterday did not even exist. Ah, the joy and the discovery of travel. He then made a decision. I shall be inhumanly impartial in everything I write. Both sides will be displeased, but I cannot do otherwise. Now I am beginning, and this is my absolutely final evolution, not to be preoccupied with left or right ideas. Indeed, both sides were going to be unhappy. The Soviets banned his books. The Catholic Church placed his novel, The Last Temptation, on its index. The Holy Synod in Athens attempted to ban several of his works. And yet, despite his anger with Greece, he still expressed his happiness when the Greek army was successful against the Italian forces in the Albanian campaign during World War II. To Eleni, 1940. Dear Yanitsa, right after you left, Gorica fell. I was overjoyed. This morning I saw Kelmuko. He had climbed up his terrace and hoisted a beautiful Greek flag. Later, the war came close to home. To Eleni, 1941, from his house on Egina. Beloved Litnochka, please don't worry at all about the future. There may not be any. Here, during these recent days of the war, the vicinity of our house has been a danger zone. Bombs near Marini's taverna, he himself was almost killed. Machine gun shots a few meters from the house. I saw the planes passing over my head. It was during the German occupation that Kazantzakis began writing Zorba the Greek in an unheated stone house, wearing gloves. The meal for the day was a plate of yogurt. As a writer, this work would be his first real financial success in almost 50 years. In 1945, the Greek government sent him to Crete, along with 2 professors from the University of Athens, to draft a report on the sufferings of this island. To Eleni, July 1945. Still in Hanya, our car broke down. We're trying to find tires or have the English give us another vehicle. We toured several villages by donkey. Crete is in great pain. In one village, we were welcomed by women, all wearing black. Their husbands had been shot by the Germans. Whole villages burned. The people don't have a spoon or a glass or a piece of clothing or wine, and they weep at not having anything to offer us. One's heart cracks. Heraklion, July 19, 1945. I'm in Heraklion. The car's broken down again. They're repairing it, and so we won't make any tour. The city unrecognizable. Ruins of old homes, new people. My acquaintances are dead or impoverished. I go and come amid bitter recollections, feeling no joy. Kazantzakis then made the decision to leave the political arena. He felt he could not make the compromises the political life required. he steeped himself again in his creative work and his religious concerns. Like Tolstoy, he wanted to create a new faith. Early in his life, he wrote to brother Papa Stefano, a childhood friend, now a priest living in New York. I spoke to you before that God for me is the struggler, capital S. In every moment, in every body, struggling to rise upward and bridge the gap between body and soul. Our God is not all good, all beautiful, all wise. If he were, what value would our cooperation have? If he were, how would we be able to suffer, struggle, and ascend? Thus we move on, thus we proceed without reward, without rest, without certainty, I and my God. Whoever can is welcome to follow us. Kazantzakis wanted a faith that was demanding, evolutionary, and inclusive, with a God who needs human beings to help pull him and them from the grasp of matter and move them to upper levels of spirit, the influence of Bergson. And one that had a purposeless heroism, a struggle without fear, a hope for future reward, Nietzsche. Who would understand this effort? To Papa Stefano, 1922. Here in Berlin, I have found a nucleus of Jews, and I'm offering them a connection with our God. They are the only group that can accept him. Kazantzakis also felt the need to reinterpret religious mythology as the ancients did. For him, mythos in Greek was not a fairy tale. It said something true about the world in which we live. That it was not factually true did not reduce its beauty or its power. To Boris Knoss, secretary of Sweden's Ministry of Education, and a friend, 1950. I have a great liking for the age-old familiar legends. Didn't the ancients do likewise? There were certain cycles from which they took their themes, and they simply tried to renew them, to give them greater depth and expanded meaning. I shall try to do the same now. God help me. By the way, two meanings to that, God help me. God come to my assistance, and God help me when I think of some responses I'm going to get for what I'm going to do. In The Last Temptation, he created a different Christ in his novel. A figure as God-man who had to struggle to find out who he was, the influence of Buddha, and had to resist sexual desire, and had to conquer fear and will his own divinity, Nietzsche. To Knoss, 1951. I wanted to renew and supplement the sacred myth that underlines the great Christian civilization of the West. It isn't a simple life of Christ. It is a laborious, sacred, creative endeavor to reincarnate the essence of Christ. And more of the harassment that began in 1928 came for his political and now is essentially religious views. Although he wrote travel books and was invited by other nations to visit their shores, he always had trouble getting his passport, or if he did, he was restricted for 3 months or 6 months, etc. He was excoriated by some in the press. Let me give you a few samples. Why can't he see the lights of America? Does he see them all red? His writings should be blotted out and burned and scattered into the air. Kazantzakis tampers with a perfection. He should be sent to hell. Eat a big mouthful, Mr. Kazantzakis. Don't make a big speech. He wants the Nobel Prize. Bombard him with yogurt. To Knoss on the Pope's response to The Last Temptation. Here is a book that I wrote in a state of deep religious exaltation with a fervent love for Christ, and now a representative of Christ has no understanding of it at all, cannot understand the Christian love with which it was written, and he condemns it. Knoss on the reaction of certain officials in the Orthodox Church in America to his novel. they damned The Last Temptation as extremely indecent, atheistic, and treasonable after admitting they had not read it and had based their case on articles in Hestia. By the way, Hestia, the Greek newspaper Hestia, had attacked him for his early attraction to communism in the 1920s until his death in 1957. One official in the church claimed he is succeeding in making sure that very few people saw the film made from the novel. In Greece, Archbishop Diocletus of Athens later refused Eleni Kazantzakis' request that her husband lie in state after his death in the smallest Athenian church. Another bishop called him a Judas. But the church was by no means monolithic in its view of Kazantzakis. Archbishop Yanos of Thyatira wrote to others in the church to support Kazantzakis' candidacy for the Nobel Prize. And Patriarch Athenagoras refused to yield to pressures to condemn Kazantzakis and was in his corner. Archbishop Macarius, the duly elected president of Cyprus, who was ousted by the Greek junta, was also a supporter and a close friend of Eleni Kazantzakis. As a writer for almost 50 years, in which he wrote a 33,000-line sequel to the Odyssey, over a dozen plays, 10 novels, a half a dozen travel books, translations of Dante, Goethe, and Homer's Iliad into modern Greek, many books for children, a Greek dictionary, philosophical and religious treatises, he wrote to his friend Yannis Kakridis, 1951. I've exchanged 2 letters with Sophia Antoniadis this year. She says she's put together an anthology of modern Greek literature, and from all my work, she has chosen only a few lines from my translation of Dante. So she presents me as a translator. Ah, he says, eternal Greeks. Another irony, he wrote from France to his Swedish friend Nikos about what was going on in Greece in 1955. How he was a literary success 2 years before his death. I have ended up becoming famous in Greece. All the newspapers, except 2, have declared themselves on my side, and from all parts of Greece, telegrams are being sent in protest over the priest wanting to seize my books. And so my name has become well known to everyone. Earlier in this talk, I mentioned Kazantzakis' view that humankind must help God move the world to a higher level of spiritual development, that it must work, quote, to save God, a view that critics in Greece and elsewhere found particularly offensive. I also pointed out that in one of his letters, Kazantzakis said a nucleus of Jews in Berlin would understand what he was doing. Rabbi Harold Kushner, in his chapter on the Book of Job, in his very successful book, When Bad Things Happen to Good People, has great difficulty handling the death of his son at 14 from progeria, old age. Is there a more terrible way to watch your son die? What distresses him in particular? In an attempt to console him, friends inform him that it was God's will. Kushner does not want to blame God for what happened to his son. He then argues that the creation of the world in Genesis in 7 days was a metaphor, interesting Greek word, and with an evolutionary perspective, each day in fact may mean millions of years. Therefore, God did not complete the creation and left some things to happen at random. Humankind must help bring the creation to to the fulfillment that God has extended to it over time. Almost 50 years later, one can hear once again the voice of Kazantzakis. And like the classical Greeks, Kazantzakis was not afraid to stress the importance of humor in religious matters. One thinks of a comment of Aldous Huxley, who said, "There is no crime the religious believer will not commit in the certainty of his righteousness." By the way, just look at the newspapers if you don't think people kill over religious issues. We see this in Kazantzakis' creation of Alexis Zorba. And we see the concept of awareness, of being awake, detachment, moment-to-moment living, non-violence, and the interconnectedness of all things in the Buddhistic aspect of Kazantzakis' most dynamic hero. Unfortunately, we do not have the letters that Nikos Kazantzakis wrote to Yorgos Zorbas, the somewhat illiterate laborer who was the prototype for his famous hero, the one who Kazantzakis says taught him how to love life and not fear death. We do, however, have several letters from Zorbas that he wrote to Kazantzakis while working as a miner in the mountains of Serbia. Here is my translation of a short piece from two of them. By the way, in actual life, Zorbas did not look like Anthony Quinn. Unlike the figure in the novel or the film, Zorbas was a short man. Together, Kazantzakis and he looked more like Don Quixote and Sancho Panza. When I was first in Greece in 1963, I used to take my son Dean for ice cream in a nearby restaurant. The waiter there, who often sat with us, was a Zorbatic figure filled with joy and energy. I'll try to capture how he might have read these letters. Niš, Serbia, 1922. Dear Mr. Nikola Kazantzakis, I received your letter 3 days ago. I am happy for it. And then when we'll be traveling together, I shall be happy too. You think it's funny when I say we have more value because we are looking for the beautiful? But all the others I have known, they seek money, and as soon as they get it, pop, they stop working. They avoid their friends, beg for a dowry, get married, and begin the boring household life. They are managed by a woman, good or bad, and there's nothing else. In this business, I don't throw you into this mix, only myself. And as for me, I got married as a joke. My bossy lady, she died. It was the one good thing she did, and I'm still laughing, especially my friends send me their condolences. And I smile too when I think of God. He doesn't frighten me, nor does death neither. It's nothing and I'm nothing too. And the doings of nature do not faze me, even if the tail of some crazy comet bangs into the earth and turns us all into tomata salata, tomato salad. I'll laugh again. Anyway, the devil's going to get me someday. I'll die and turn into an unconscious rag, a kurei, stinking up the whole world, and that will be obligated to bury me. So be it. But there's one thing I'm afraid of, and I feel it very, very deep. I fear old age. I can find no invention to lick out this fear. Very bad I consider it to say I am an old man, and that I will be subjecticated to everything I hate. I'll lose my freedom. My daughter-in-law or my daughter will be bossing me, giving me orders to keep my eye on some monster, their child, to keep it from burning itself, falling on its head in itself, and letting the devil into itself. Now I find this very narrow, very narrow. I, who can leap over the highest barriers, I, who fearlessly roam wheresoever you write me, I, who be praised like the forest of Mount Athos, like the whole of Russia, etc., to end up a nursemaid of a bunch of little monsters, my grandchildren, they peeing on my apron, and I'm not having the right to speak and say, I am disgusticated, ill-fated couple meaty that I am. Concerning these stupidities and imbecilities I'm writing you, we shall meet and converse about all of them. I am asking for you to come here. You'll see how fine and beneficial it will be that we be together. For on the surface of the earth there is life, and it has flowers, and many good things. It has all sorts of wonderful things. However, they do not please me, because everywhere I go, I find the bad things mixed with the good. So be it. Now that you will write me, I shall see what kind of letter you shall be asking for. I laughed at your last letter when you asked me to write big letter, megalograma. That is to say, I have all kinds and sorts of letters, size 1, size 2, size 3. It's a comedy, a commedia. Luckily, we are not in Greece for the postman to be laughing when he sees my big size letters. Always with love I greet you, and always the same. Diodorus Zorbas Alexei Zol. The following is a scene that I have dramatized from Zorba the Greek. We see Kazantzakis' imaginative skill. He takes a man who worked with the soil, loved the wonders of nature, and turns him into a mythical hero. The boss, or Nikos, Dean is going to be the boss. You better watch his step.
Yes, sir.
Boss is meditating to control the desires of the flesh, and Zorba is enjoying his supper. Zorba speaks to him about God. Boss, the body's got a soul too. Take pity on it. This Christ Buddha of yours, give him something to eat. This meat is so tasty. One mouthful and such forgiveness.
What about man's spirit, Zorba? Don't you believe in anything?
I believe in Zorba only. Not that I'm better than anyone else. I'm a brute like the rest. But I'm the only being I have in my power. When I die, the whole Zorbatic kingdom will go crashing to the bottom.
What egotism?
I can't help it, boss. That's how it is. I eat horse beans, I talk horse beans. I am Zorba, I speak Zorbatically. He was Zorbas, below Zorbatica.
What about God?
I think about God as being exactly like me. Only taller, stronger, crazier, and immortal in the bargain.
This is nonsense.
But God is a nobleman and he forgives. He's innocent and good-hearted, like you, boss. I tell him my offenses, he holds a deep sponge, and fa! He wipes them all out. Bah!
But what?
I hate to say it, but often the devil has the edge on God. Have you noticed? Everything good is the invention of the devil. Lovely women, springeros lamb, wine, feta, hot bread. The devil made them. And God, he made monks, fasting, chamomile tea, bureaucrats, and hysterical women. I can hear my wife now. Where you going, Alexei? Who pass, Alexei? Where you going? Who pass? Fun idea.
This is foolishness.
Maybe. But that's where we are. But right now, boss, I'm feeling this great urge. This mania. I'm in the grip of a 90, necessity. What do you say? Shall we dance? Boss. You know, boss, I have never loved anyone as much as you. You have everything. There's one thing you need to cut the rope, to set you free. You need a touch of madness. Trela. Kazantzakis' joke was over about the superiority of Cretans with their Arabic blood over other Greeks. You heard this tale from the Cretan. When it comes to toughness, there are three kinds of men. The Athenians, they eat their eggs without the shells. The Spartans, they eat their eggs with the shells. And we Cretans, we eat the eggs, the shells, and the plates too. Kazantzakis told us the purpose of his work. What was the writer's responsibility? He is duty bound not to sleep. He must keep his people on the alert. Furthermore, I think this role of the writer as agitator is indispensable in all countries ruled by injustice. That is, virtually throughout the whole earth. Kazantzakis did indeed follow Zorba's advice. It was an act of madness, if you like, to agitate for a new interpretation of the Christ story. One that many feel is inviolate, sacrosanct, and not to be tampered with. His hero Jesus agitates for new values, and it leads him to the cross. He resists spending his life as a carpenter. He is tempted to resist fulfilling his sexual life by marrying and having a comfortable, quiet existence. He resists his society by challenging things the way they are. What was his reward? Kazantzakis writes, on the cross, Jesus felt a wild, indomitable joy. Why? Happiness amidst all this pain. Yes, he was being crucified because he did not betray his calling or his disciples. And the most important thing for Kazantzakis, he had kept his word. For Kazantzakis, every worthy person who keeps his or her word must face a kind of crucifixion. In my play, He Who Must Die, an adaptation of Kazantzakis' Christ was Crucified, leaders of the village cast a young man to play a role of Jesus in a passion play. He wants to live his role. He decides to help a group of refugees who enter the town, and the leaders turn on him and take his life. In this scene from the play, Kapitan Fortunas, a member of the village council, but a supporter of the refugees, meets with Nikos, the lawyer's son of the village leader, to settle his estate. Nikos is also in the same camp with Manolios, the Christ figure, and the refugees.
Don't tire yourself, Kapitan. There's no hurry.
Right, and forget your consolations. I've had 7 lives and 6 have gone. One remains, and it's here on my lips. Make a little haste and write down what I tell you.
I'm listening.
First, write that I have my wits about me and that I'm an Orthodox Christian. My superior officer was Theodore Kapandai. I don't have any children or dogs. I never married, thank God for that. I had some money, I ate it. I had fields, I sold them, and I ate them too. No, I didn't eat them, I drank them. It's the same thing. I had a boat, but it was wrecked at Trapezunda, and it disappeared. The few things in my room behind the coffee house and that's what is left. Right. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
The demijohn braki I leave to the Aga. Let him drink it to my health. Let my gold tooth be pulled out and made into a earring for the widow Katerina. My chibuki with a long end of stem I give to the Cafe Constantis. The few coins I have in my purse give to the priest Grigoris, but else he won't bury me and I will rot in the open. The rest, some rugs, some old hats, sweaters, a pair of captain's boots, a lantern, a compass, and a few metal things. Give them to those in the caves on Sarapina. Also give them the pots, the stove, the plates, and the clothes that I'm wearing. Also the coffee, the sugar, the onions, and the bottle of oil, the cheese, and the cup of olives. Everything. I feel sorry for those people. Have you written it down, Nikos?
Yes, but don't hurry.
There's a photograph of my ship in my room, and this is a key glass. I want to take these things with me. They have been my work and my pleasure. I won't leave them behind.
Is there anything else?
No, there you have my entire statement.
write everything down, and I'll sign my name at the bottom. And by the way, I have this book, The Arabian Nights. I want Manolos to have it. Mikhailis goes off to get a seal for the will. Manolos enters, and he and the Capitan talk about a trip they will take together. They dance, and it will be the final moment of happiness for Manolos. Like his hero Manolos, Kazantzakis was not afraid to take a difficult stance on an issue. In his biography of Kazantzakis, Nikiforos Rutakos writes, "Honor to those who in a time of ethical decline persist in standing tall, and heaven help them." And Panat Istrati, a Romanian writer who spent months with Kazantzakis traveling together in the Soviet Union, left one of the rare character sketches of Kazantzakis that we possess. The Cretan was extremely methodical, not a bit of verbosity, awkward during visits to factories and hospitals. But what he sought most fervently was the human document, the hero. How forcefully he attacked every illusion in order to discover on occasion a splendid reality. And never knew a man with a greater thirst for purity and heroism. Sprung from a Cretan peasant, he steeped himself in the full range of ancient wisdom and modern science. He then cut himself off from his father, his class, and even from wisdom itself. He lives on a bowl of soup and a pound of apples, or a kippered herring. His luggage, 10 kilos to voyage around the world. His apartment, a cot, but his desires, a universe. His companionship, an all-consuming happiness. Kazantzakis was a creatively happy person and could not understand the animosity that was directed toward him. And then the central theme in his endeavor as a writer, to Knos, 1952. The major and almost the only theme of all my work is the struggle of man with God, in quotation marks. The unyielding, inextinguishable struggle of the naked worm called a human being against the terrifying power and darkness of the forces within him and around him. As many of you know, Kazantzakis was a candidate for the Nobel Prize in Literature on several occasions. And there were individuals in Greece who opposed his candidacy all the way up the social scale, some claim, to Queen Frederica herself. After his death, his wife Eleni received this letter from a French writer who won the prize when Kazantzakis was a major contender for this high honor. Madame, I have always nurtured much admiration, and if you permit me, affection for your husband's work. I gave public testimony of my view in Athens at a time official Athens was frowning upon him. The welcome I received from the audience, many of whom were students, was the finest tribute your husband's work and acts could have received. And I can't forget that on the day I accepted an honor he deserved 100 times more, I received the most ardent telegram congratulating me from him. One of our great artists has vanished. Sincerely, Albert Camus. And a little personal note, in 1997, I wrote to Eleni Kazantzakis, who died in 2004, informing her that we did a Kazantzakis reading at the Greek Institute in Cambridge to honor the 40th anniversary of Kazantzakis' death. my wife Elaine introduced the program and stated that on the day of Kazantzakis' death, we were presenting an adaptation of Christ the Crucified, He Who Must Die, at a theater in New York. I finished my letter with these words: I want to express my feeling deep within my heart that Kazantzakis changed my life toward the better, and whatever effort I have given to his work has given me joy and consolation for many years. Τελειώνοντας das γράμμα μου, θα ήθελα να εκφράσω μέσα από την καρδιά μου ότι ο Kazantzakis άλλαξε την ζωή μου προς το καλύτερο και όποια εργασία έχω κάνει με το έργο του μου έχει δώσει χαρά και παρηγοριά. Με φιλία και αγάπη, Μιχάλης. I want to thank AHEPA District 23 for inviting me to speak today. I also want to thank my son Dean for producing He Who Must Die with a superlative director and cast. And to this audience, my gratitude for your attention and thank you for coming.